Good evening. This side Rahul Magan here as a Group Chief Executive Officer, Treasury Consulting, and also a second year law student. Today, I would be deliberating on a very important topic which I'm trying to figure out since 2015. But fortunately, now, after 8 to 9 years, the global media started talking about that topic. We need to understand that as we speak, almost every central bank of the globe, almost every central bank of the globe is trying to raise the interest rate. The rationale behind that raise is very clear. The rationale is they feel that they are able to tame the inflation via hiking the interest rate. But we all understand that rather than inflation is coming down, inflation is going up. Whether it is United States, United Kingdom, or any other developed or developing economy, inflation is going up. Ladies and gentlemen, in many cases, many countries, inflation officially recorded more than 25%. And statistically speaking, it is difficult to assume that many countries are quoting the right inflationary number into picture. Now, as the interest rates are rising, it is creating a trouble for the local governments. And how it is creating a trouble for the local governments in the sense like the local governments are also increasing their debt. And unfortunately, the debt to GDP ratio as we speak, according to the statistics which is prescribed by IIF, International Institute of Finance, it is roughly 336%. Now, which precisely means that if the GDP is of $1, assuming the global GDP is of $1, then the global debt is $3.36, which means there is an extra leverage of 2.36 as compared to 1:1 ratio of debt and GDP. Tactfully speaking, debt to GDP ratio, according to me, should not be more than 80%, which means if global GDP on a yearly note is roughly $1, assuming, then the debt should be 80 cents or max to max 90 cents. But today it is 3.36 times. Whether it's a corporate or a government or a banking entity or a big financial institution or a big private equity player, when you take the debt, you are supposed to pay it back. Generally speaking, the debt is taken on a longer period, which means 5 years, 10-year horizon. Now, when we're taking the debt on a 5-year, 10-year horizon, in this eventuality, what happens in the meantime, we continue to pay something which is called interest cost. Now, that interest cost is a huge number because that is denting the balance sheet or the P&L of that relevant government or the relevant corporate or a hedge fund or a private equity player. The debt to service ratio is having the same formula as you are having in case of corporate. So please don't feel that the debt to service ratio is having a different formula. It is having the same formula. Now the point here is today is around 24th September 2023. Almost 2 to 3 days ago, there was a news in the public and that news was scary. But unfortunately, that news was ignored as always. And the news was the global debt increased to 307 trillion. You heard me very right. Global debt is increased to 307 trillion. Ladies and gentlemen, 307 trillion is not a small amount. It may be a small amount for few people, but to me, it is definitely not a small amount. And for a while, for a while, I assume that this debt is standing at a 4% interest rate. Assuming at 4% interest rate, then it means on a yearly basis, the globe is paying approximately $28 trillion worth of debt, which means minimum $28 trillion of debt to be paid in interest cost to be paid in 1 year. Ladies and gentlemen, $28 trillion worth of interest cost is not a small amount. Probably it may be a small amount for few Einstein and Edisons, but to me, it is definitely not a small amount. Generally, what happens when the government pays a heavy interest, then government left with two options. Option number one, government print the money and pay that debt, because printing of the money is always vested in the jurisdiction of the government. The government is powerful enough to print any quantum of money in that country. Now, when the government do the printing, in this eventuality, big money chasing few goods, because goods are intact, but the money is growing, growing, growing. It means big money is chasing few goods. It means inflation. If the government do not print, then the government left with last option, which is taxes. And if the government impose unrealistic taxes on the aam janta or the public, in this eventuality, the household saving ratio to GDP, which is technically household saving to GDP, read with the capital formation falls. And this fall is never be fast in nature. Slowly and steadily, this ratio falls. And a time would come in the history of any country when this ratio falls to our highest level. Henceforth, before we move to first, second part of the video, one thing which we need to understand that debt is the problem of all big issues we are having. It is a root cause of all big issues which we are having. It is up to the government to decide whether they want it to be an indebted country or free of debt. I always say to my subscribers that I do 1.5 hours to 2 hours of research every day on social media. And by research, I scrutinize the information which is available in the public domain, where I watch various websites like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Nikkei Times, Financial Times London, and many other different websites where I feel that information is realistic in nature. But unfortunately, we are having few websites where information is one-sided in nature. But like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Nikkei Times, Financial Times London, they are the barometers as far as the business world is concerned. And when I say New York Times is trying to cover a very, very good quality news, we really need to appreciate that. New York Times really need to appreciate that. Financial Times London is also giving a very tough competition. But having said that, it is very difficult to decide who is better because both are better in their domain. This news, which we received from my favorite website, Financial Times London, which I am following since 2007. And before I take this news further, I really wholeheartedly thank you, Financial Times, for bringing such fantastic news along with the statistics and figures. From the last 8 to 9 years, I am raising this point that the debt across the globe is growing. Today, we are citing this news, and that news is little bit scary, and that news is that UK is on track to incur the highest debt interest cost in the developed world this year as persistently higher inflation and unusual large proportion of the bonds linked to price rises damages the public finances. According to the public statistics, the debt to GDP ratio of the UK is more than 100%, which means for a minute assume the GDP is £1, it means the debt is more than £1. Like I said, if UK government or any other government is raising a huge debt that needs to be paid. So there are two examples, only two resolutions. Either you print the money or you increase the taxes. If you print the money, inflation will go up. If you're trying to chase that inflation via hiking the interest rate, I call this finflation. That's my word, finflation, which means one side you are increasing the debt. When the interest cost come, you print the money and then inflation go up. Then you're trying to increase the interest rate and then you're trying to tame the same inflation which rising because of the printing of money. I title this as finflation. Ladies and gentlemen, according to this public information, which is published on the website of Financial Times London, the Treasury means the highest recognized department of the government. Because I also worked in the Treasury function, so I understand what is Treasury. Every corporate, bank, financial institutions, hedge funds, asset management companies, they have their separate treasury function. Some treasury function act as a profit center while many treasury function act as a cost center. That is up to company to company. There is no point to debate. But I strongly feel that treasury to be acted as a profit center rather than as a cost center. But still, I respect the decision of that corporate and their throughput behind that. According to the public information, the Treasury will spend 110 billion on debt interest in 2023. 110 billion GBP. Ladies and gentlemen, 110 billion GBP, which is not a small amount, at least to me. And that much interest cost you would be paying in 2023. Now, this statistics is not by my side. This statistics is by our rating agencies called Fitch. And Fitch, as we speak, is considered amongst most reputed rating agencies in the world. And amongst three, which is Standard & Poor, Moody's, and Fitch. According to the same rating agency, Fitch, at 10.4%, at 10.4% of the government revenue, that would be the highest level of any high income country. It means that this 110 billion is the 10% of the government revenue, which means technically the government revenue is 1.1 trillion GBP on a very tentative note. 1.1 trillion GBP. It means out of 1.1 trillion GBP, approximately 10%, which means roughly 110 billion GBP to be spent on the interest cost. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if that level of interest cost to be paid for 5 years, assuming for 5 years, 2023, 24, 25, 26, and 27, assuming. It means at the end of fifth year, United Kingdom would end up paying 550 billion pound. Take a note that 550 billion pound to honor the debt commitment. Now that 550 billion pound, by the way, is a huge number. It's a huge number. And this number is more important because it can dent the financial or the economic conditions of any country of the globe. Henceforth, it is very important for Rishi Sunak, who is acting as a Prime Minister of London, to take this matter very, very seriously. Because if the debt to GDP ratio would continue to rise substantially, which according to public information is 336%. For UK, it is little bit higher than 100%. Then this may dent the financial position of United Kingdom. I would be requesting, before I take this step further, to requesting to Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of London, to please take this matter into serious consideration as the debt cost is very, very high. If I go with the news, which is published in Financial Times London, then it is saying roughly a quarter of the UK government debt. Quarter means 25%. Roughly a quarter of the UK government debt is in the form of so-called index-linked bonds, whose payout fluctuate in line with inflation, making a country a huge outlier internationally. Now, it means that actually, ladies and gentlemen, index-linked bonds means they are those bonds who are linked with the inflation index. Many countries are having their different inflation indexes. Some are debatable, some are not debatable without quoting any specific name. But having said that, index linked bonds are those bonds which are linked with the index which is used to measure the inflation in that country. Suppose the index is going up, the value of that index is going up. It means that the inflation in this country is going up. Having said that, this increased the payout to those who opted, who invested in the bonds which is linked with index. So let me give you a very simplistic example. December 2023, assuming the index was $100. December 2023, which means 1 year down, 22 to 23, index gone up to 106, which means the inflation measured is 6%. Now that 6% increase, it means that 6% yield to be paid to the bondholders. Suppose the last year 2021, it was 98, from 98 to 100, which means marginal increase, nothing to worry. But from 100 to 106, it means 6% increase. Now you need to pay 6% interest rate. Suppose the total debt in the books is $1 trillion. Suppose. It means how much you pay? You would be paying $60 billion as an interest. $60 billion. Inflation is going up. There is hardly any doubt. Russia-Ukraine war, geopolitical issues, and today I watched China-Taiwan. When I was watching the YouTube channel, I got to know that Taiwan is worried about the air drills of China. I don't know whether China would be attacking Taiwan, China would not be attacking Taiwan. But having said that, there is one question which is widely open, which is called geopolitical issue. And God forbid if China attacked Taiwan. In this eventuality, the inflation, which is already skyrocketing, it would rocket more than a sky. It means these indexes would go up. And when these indexes would go up, in this eventuality, the only thing which is set to happen is the potential increase in the debt cost of that relevant country. Now, in the case of United Kingdom, according to the statistics published by Financial Times, it is approximately 25%. Italy is the next highest share, which is approximately 12%, while other countries are having less than 10%. Honestly speaking, 10% is a big number. It should be closer to 6% or max to max 7%. Now, the biggest issue here is the depreciation of the currency. If the government would be paying a huge interest cost, it means more GBP would be in the circulation. Either you increase the taxes or you print more GBP would be in the circulation. It means GBP would depreciate more. I'm not saying you would buy GBP. I'm not saying that. But having said that, the interest cost of relevant country always have an impact on the currency of that country. Example, Japanese yen is approximately 148. I remember there was a time when Japanese yen was 80. $1 equal to 80 Japanese yen. Today, $1 is equals to 148 Japanese yen. I went through many articles on the internet. Few even said it would touch more than 220 and few said it would restrict to 180. I don't know. But one thing I know very clearly is that the debt of the Japan is very, very high. And unfortunately, the government is not in a position to tame that debt. But one good thing government is doing, which where we need to appreciate the Japanese government, unlike British government, is that they are not hiking the interest rate. Effective 2021, when the central bank started hiking the interest rate, Japan and China are the two countries in the world who stood firm and clearly said that they won't be hiking the interest rate no matter what. And I think this is one of the reasons, even though globally we are facing recession, I call this depression. Few people calling this recession, that is their call. Japan and China are able to maintain the status quo. That's very important. We have we have had a large inflation shock which is adversely impacting the public finances. That is obviously a key driver of the sovereign credit rating. I completely agree because sovereign credit rating depends on the public finances. If on Y to Y basis, any country, any nation continue to borrow from the market, it means there is a serious credibility issue in that country. Very important thing which I wish to highlight before you is that the UK debt interest cost have increased dramatically in the past 2 years from an average of 6.2% between 2017 and 21 from an average of between 2000 the country Iceland has a debt cost of 11%. 11% Iceland cost. Just think about that. So, according to Financial Times London statistics, the average debt cost is 6.2% between 2017 and 2021. And thankfully, European Central Bank not hiked in September 2023 policy. But having said that, there is no guarantee that they won't be hiking in the near future. It may be possible that United Kingdom European Central Bank may be hiking or Bank of England may be hiking further probably by 25 basis point. It would have an impact not only on the euro but also on the GBP. Ladies and gentlemen, on time to time basis, I am warning people that if the debt do not came down, it would have a substantial impact on the balance sheet of the globe. And sometimes our country is very strong, very powerful, economically stable, limited fiscal deficit, but due to a contagion effect, which means something happening in UK would have a contagion effect in India, something happening in India would have a contagion effect in the Asia Pacific, something happening in Australia would have a contagion impact in the Asia Pacific region. This contagion impact would grow. That's what I wanted to convey to you. We really need to understand that the credit rating, the inflation, the printing of money, the huge interest cost, the debt which supposed to be paid is a serious concern for this globe. 307 trillion of debt is definitely not a small amount. If anyone feel that it is a small amount, then I can't answer this question. Rising debt cost in the UK came as inflation proves harder to tame than in other developed economies. Despite recent signs of improving data, the UK Retail Price Index, which guides index linked gilt interest payment, rose 10.7% in the year to June, which means June to June basis, it is risen by 10.7%. While wage inflation has not yet showing signs of easing. However, the rating agencies expect UK interest costs to stabilize at historic high levels. We expect the debt affordability of the UK to remain weak, said Ivan Volman, a senior credit rating official at rating agency Moody's. God forbid if tomorrow the UK rating would downgrade, it would depreciate GBP subsequently, which would have further impact on the export to import. All those who are importing in dollars, they would be paying more. And all those who are exporting in dollars, they would be getting more. And those who are importing more, they will increase the price of their products because the cost has risen. While the exporters will get a benefit of that, which would definitely be known as the fair value impact or the cash flow impact. Henceforth, the time has come when the central banks needs to interact with the government directly on the public finances. United States is also facing near about $33 trillion of debt. US government is looking for a shutdown this week, and this news is there in the public. According to public information, after 10 days, there is a probable chance that US government will shut down. And US government, which is standing on $33 trillion of debt, and assuming the average cost is 4%, assuming it means 1.2 trillion. Assuming, which is, and how much you're supposed to pay? Did you ever thought about that? Did you ever thought about that? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a high time when not only the developed economies but also the developing economies needs to sit either virtually or in person, and they need to agree on one resolution that no more debt. I have no say in that. But one thing I'm aware that if the debt would continue to rise, like it is rising in Japan, it is rising in US, it is rising in UK and many other countries of the globe, this would have a catastrophic impact on the future generations. It would also make foreign exchange a highly volatile asset class. GBP was 1.28 approximately 2 weeks ago. 1.28. But I not hedge this because I was aware that 1.28 as compared to the public finances is really a very big price GBP is asking. I waited, today it is around 1.24. It means four big figure down. Now think about an exporter who exported 1 million GBP worth of goods, 1 million GBP worth of goods. He's saying, dude, I did it 1.28, today it is 1.24, which means four big figures down. It's a loss to me. But about an importer, it's a big thing. Volatility in the currency market would come very soon, and we need to handle this. Are we ready for this or do not? I can't answer this question. You have to decide. This is Rahul Magan from Treasury Consulting Group and a second year law student. You have my number 9899242978. I wish to tell you one thing, the debt supposed to reduce fast.